What's going on, fellas? Welcome to the ultimate guide to letting your nuts hang and stroking it in bubble baths of SR. Today I'm gonna school y'all on Reaper theory and everyday reaping 101. Yes, I've made a Reaper guide before, but I was only a wee little lad back then, and everyone's philosophy on how the game worked was very different. I've learned a lot more about the art of Reaper, and I decided to bestow this newfound information onto my disciples. This video is for both my Reaper veterans and the new recruits, so don't worry what rank you are. I love you all equally. In this video, I will be going over when to play Reaper, different gameplay styles such as pincering, off-tanking, and flanking, aim techniques, target priority, Wraith Form usage, shadow step usage, death blossoms, and just some overall general tips and tricks to help improve your mechanics and overall game sense when playing Reaper. Timestamps can be seen in the description, and before we get into this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share this video with your piss-hello friends, and let's get right into it. Let's start off with reasons and situations for playing Reaper. Reaper is mainly played for his tank busting capabilities, his ability to hold space and create angles using Shadow Step and Wraith Form, his handsomeness, and his dominance in close quarters. Usually you want to play Reaper in situations against heroes that have larger hitboxes, that play at your range, or have low mobility. Most commonly, Reaper is played against brawl comps or dive comps. Reaper is very powerful in the frontline battle in brawl comps against Ramattra, Reinhardt, Junker Queen, Mauga, and others, and can easily force out dive tanks such as Doomfist and Winston. On the other hand, Reaper is hot garbage against poke comps, mainly heroes with long-range capabilities like Ashe, Widow, Hanzo, and others. Reaper is also balls against heroes who have a high amount of armor or have abilities that can eat damage, mainly D.Va and Orisa. Moving on from the enemy team, if you're playing Reaper, it is best for your teammates to play to the strengths of your character by providing a brawl environment with some sort of speed boost, or create an open environment for you to play off of people's dives and utilize your repositioning abilities. Not only do the heroes matter in your decision, but also the map you are on. To make it simple, Reaper eats up on these maps and is pretty pathetic on these maps. Open spaces with long sightlines and low amounts of cover suck for Reaper, and maps that are close quarters, have multiple lanes and rotation angles, and have important choke points or corners that Reaper can play off of are areas that Reaper excels in. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, we can start talking about his gameplay. Reaper does an incredible amount of damage up close, and one of the easiest ways to get value with him is by taking advantage of map geometry and angles to create pincers on targets with your frontline. And of course, depending on if you're attacking or defending, the ways of actually performing a pincer will be pretty different. Let's start with defending because it's actually a lot simpler than you think. Let's look at this overhead view of Lijiang Tower Night Market. As we can see, if we are currently defending the objective, the enemy team has to start at point A, over here, to point B, and then to point C, where we are playing on the outskirts of to stop any flanks coming from the sides. There are two locations where we as a team can easily catch the enemy team and push in on them, those being the space in between point B and C, and just on point C, and we're going to call these the crash points. This is due to both spaces being out in the open, having barely any cover, a little amount of space, and there being few and very predictable escape routes. If my team is looking for an engage between point B and C here, it is best for Reaper to play along this wall or in the corner to get an alternative angle on the enemy team. Look to either focus whoever you can easily get a pick off of, or to focus whoever your tank is currently attacking. If my team was looking to engage on point C, then about 2 seconds before we go in, I would teleport on top of these windows and drop onto any of the previously mentioned targets. In this location, you could also play off of these walls during the mid-fight as well. Once you are able to figure out where the crash point is for that fight, you can prepare by positioning in locations that will play off of that point and provide an opening for you to get shots in. And of course, the crash points will vary depending on the fight, abilities, and whatever's going on in the match. On attack, this strategy is very similar, but you would need to utilize Shadow Step to be able to get pincers on the enemy team. If we were attacking on the same point, I would want to TP somewhere past point C near the edge of the map. For example, this box next to the health pack, and drop onto the enemy backline or help my tank in the front. Do be aware that Overwatch players on the rare chance have common sense. So if you are TPing into the backline every fight or sitting in the same corner repeatedly, you will become highly predictable and the enemy team will begin to scout you out and outplay you. So try occasionally switching up your positions or just your overall gameplay style. Whenever you're forced out or when your team is able to meet you in the mid-fight, you should return to the front line and switch to the tanking playstyle. Reaper is Overwatch 2's off tank. Because of his close range effectiveness, he can help establish the space the tank creates and especially helps with winning the frontline trade. When tanking as Reaper, it is important to do whatever you can to win the tank duel, and the easiest way of doing that depends on what the enemy team is running. If the enemy team has any brawl DPS that are playing near the same range as you, especially if they're also playing Reaper, it's important to let your nuts hang and cut off their angle and prevent them from getting value. Especially if you're playing around corners and walls, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage because you're forcing the enemy team to play at your range and move into the space that you have already established. You want to look to force out any major cooldowns like Wraith or Ice Block, then return to shooting the tank or whoever your tank is focusing at the time. You want to act as the supporting damage for your tank, allowing them to get kills much faster and to clear out anybody who poses a threat to them. Try to make the enemy tank use their cooldowns so your team can hard engage onto them. It is best to lightly engage first onto the front line, force out any cooldowns, and then do a hard engage onto the crash point now that you have the cooldown advantage. In any scenario that your tank does fall, you are the tank of the team. Your supports need to put everything into you and pray that you're able to get picks or make a play. Keep holding the space that you're at and try to prevent the enemy engage for as long as possible.
Hello, this is Editing Dummy here. I'm really sick, just ignore me. I totally forgot to mention this, but as Reaper, another important job is cutting off enemy DPS angles and stopping enemy DPS flanks on your backline. This could easily be done by turning around and shooting anyone in the backline and pushing them out of their position. Once this is done, then you can go back to focusing the front line. Reaper is very good at establishing his own space, so take this to advantage depending on what the actual threat is to your team.
The final playstyle of Reaper is flanking, which is heavily dependent on making solo plays on the enemy backline. By abusing the mobility from Shadow Step, you should be TPing directly behind a target that you can get a pick on. Teleport onto enemies who cannot escape from your flank or are completely separate from the rest of their team or are in a vulnerable position. This can most commonly be found when the enemy team are holding separate angles or are rotating. Get a pick or force some cooldowns out and then wraith to a safe position, either out of reach from the enemy team or a health pack. Wait for your cooldowns to come back and then flank again. This strategy is kind of only viable when playing with and against poke or dive comps because you are out of the fight for a majority of the time. Flanking is a good playstyle for maps that are extremely open and hard to play brawl on, such as Havana, Blizzard World, Circuit Royale, etc. But if you're playing those maps, then you're kind of hard throwing playing Reaper anyways. Now that we're done understanding Reaper's gameplay loops, we can finally get into his kit. Reaper's shotguns are one of the deadliest primary fires in the entire game, and to really get as much damage as possible, we need to examine the shotgun pattern. As you can see, it has this spider-like shape, and just by seeing this, we can understand that we will get the most damage if we pay attention to the vertical line in particular. So with this in mind, we want to hit as many pellets in this line as possible. When in mid-range, it's best to hit targets in the upper chest. This is so all the pellets in the vertical line can hit the target, and half of them can get headshot damage. If you aim for the head at this range, most of your pellets will actually miss due to the shotgun spread pattern, especially against a variety of small head hitboxes in this game. To help with this, these are my crosshair settings to help really understand the spread range and about how much of your shotgun spread you should line up with the enemy. With these shotguns, you can poke from a distance to build Blossom, but if you're hiding or flanking or pincering, for the love of God, do not shoot when you are farther away from 10 meters away. Reaper's fall-off damage is from 10 to 20 meters, and if you shoot within that, you'll just reveal yourself and you'll be even more useless than Aaron Keller. It's important to constantly try to close the distance as you shoot someone, so walk close to them while you're firing. But don't walk in a straight line, because that's just stupid. I don't have to tell you what common sense is. Most important part of dealing damage with Reaper is playing around cover in between your shots. If you are playing near a wall or any sort of cover, use it to your advantage because you can only shoot twice per second, having a lot of downtime in between those shots. So use that downtime to take cover and jiggle peek when you're shooting. Reaper's shotguns can be held down to automatically fire, but I would highly advise against doing this. Firing single shot on Reaper allows you to have higher precision and exact timing for each one of your shots, making you more accurate and more efficient with your ammo. And to finish this segment off, there is a pretty popular myth that Reaper's reload can be cancelled with melee to make it faster, but do not listen to this propaganda. It's actually the same amount of time due to the automatic recovery cooldown, so I would still melee to reload just to get that 40 damage in. Lifesteal is a crucial part of Reaper's identity and his ability to sustain through teamfights, and it's important to understand the situations you are in to determine if you want to play for kills or to play to live. Reaper heals for 30% of the amount of damage he deals, so you should be healing around 30 to 60 average per shot. So whenever you're low health in the mid fight, you should move back with your team into the tanking playstyle and just shoot whoever the beefiest target is on their team, which is most likely the enemy tank. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that you only heal off of the amount of damage you do, meaning if you are attacking targets with armor or targets who have some sort of damage resistance, you will be healing a lot less than normal. It's best to find targets who are big, have normal HP or don't have their armor anymore, and are already pushed into your team or into a vulnerable position. Playing for lifesteal is also very important in situations where you're down your tank and you need to hold a corner on your own, or just for stalling the objective. Also keep an eye out when you're antied because that makes you highly vulnerable, so try to cleanse it immediately with either Wraith or TP, or just hang tight until the effect is over. Wraith Form is such an essential part of Reaper. Reaper and Wraith Form is like Texas Roadhouse and honey butter, tissues and lotion. Yo mama in my bedroom. Like, Wraith Form is the most important part of Reaper's kit. It allows for so much freedom in Reaper's positioning and playmaking potential, and serves as his get out of jail free card in life-threatening situations. First off, let's go over what Wraith Form actually does. Wraith Form grants invulnerability and a 50% speed boost for 3 seconds. Wraith Form also reloads your shotguns, cleanses all negative status effects, and can be cancelled at any moment. This ability can do so much, and it is very important not to waste it because it has an 8-second cooldown. During those 8 seconds, you are highly vulnerable and will most likely become the #1 target of the lobby, so do not irresponsibly use this ability. If you are with your team, try and get healing from your supports before popping Wraith Form. There will be moments where you could definitely survive without using it, and it's a lot better to have your supports help you instead of using your cooldown, just so you have it later in the fight. After popping Wraith, immediately look for the safest place that you can be and play neutrally or set up on the next target if you're unable to escape that situation. Wraith Form can also be used to reload in niche situations, but make sure that it is safe to do so or that the fight will end within the 8-second cooldown. Using Wraith Form as an engage tool can help negate CC abilities like Flash or Sleep Dart, but it leaves you highly vulnerable, especially if you do this at the beginning of the fight. So do not Wraith to engage. I repeat, do not Wraith to engage unless you are 1v1ing someone across the entire map, or you're pushing in with Blossom, but your team needs to be giving you crazy brain for you to be doing that. Another thing to keep in mind when playing Reaper is understanding your distance away from a safe space. Wherever you're playing, no matter what playstyle, it is always best to be at least a Wraith Form away from either your team, a health pack, or just a space that the enemy team won't push into. With Wraith Form, you can cover about 25 meters of space, so keep that in mind when you're forced out when you're flanking or pincering. Shadow Step is Reaper's most underrated and commonly least utilized ability, and I'ma help y'all appreciate this ability more. In the simplest terms, Shadow Step allows Reaper to TP anywhere he wants with a max range of 35 meters. When Reaper teleports, a purple glow is visible and will tell everyone where you're teleporting to. Not only that, but Reaper has to be the loudest, most non-inconspicuous idiot in the entire world. Like, bro doesn't even try to be sneaky at all. He just announces to the entire lobby, "Repositioning from the shadows." On top of this, the actual teleport has a cast time of 1.15 seconds and an extra 0.13 seconds after the player is teleported. While you're teleporting, the camera is set to third person, and this should be utilized. When you come out of your TP, you will face the same direction the third person camera was facing. So when you're teleporting, use that opportunity to turn towards your target or at least the area you want to face. Mainly the reasons you want to teleport are either for travel, diving, or pincering and getting angles. TP to corners, to outskirts of the team fight, around cover, on high grounds, anywhere that can provide a separate angle to either hold space from the enemy DPS, create a pincer onto the enemy team, flank someone in the back line, or to set up a Death Blossom. It is best to do this with the understanding of your environment and if the intention is on you during the team fight. If the enemy team notices that you're teleporting and can see where you're going, it's going to make it very easy for them to prepare for it and counterplay you. So to avoid this, TP at times when your tank is about to go into the fight or during the mid fight when enemies are paying less attention to you. Not only in pincering, but in diving, TP is extremely important for closing the distance and making aggressive plays onto the enemy backline. And as a final note about TP, it does actually cleanse all negative status effects, which could be used during the mid-fight if you don't want to use Wraith. This is especially useful for things such as Ononade or JQ Rampage, so keep that in mind. Also, it does give a few frames of invulnerability, but I wouldn't really bet on it unless you have the timing practiced. This is mostly useful for dodging diva bombs in particular. And also, never do this. This only works in silver. I swear to God, if you do this, you're the biggest doofus brain dead idiot in the world, and I hate you. This ultimate is honestly hot garbage, and you need to recognize that to understand the realistic amount of value that you're going to get with it and when the best time is to use it. Before we get into that, we got to cover some general information on Death Blossom. Death Blossom works based off line of sight, coming from the head box of Reaper, in an 8-meter radius around him. It damages all entities around him for 185 damage per second for 3 seconds, dealing a total of 555 to each target. Blossom heals for 55.5 health per second for each target, healing 166.5 total per target. And although these numbers are high, Blossom has huge weaknesses, being its mobility and vulnerability. Blossom reduces your speed by 50% and it cannot be cancelled. Blossom can also be shut down using stuns or completely blocked with shields or projectile eating abilities. And to prevent this as much as you can, try to be sneaky with your Blossom by playing around corners or dropping from high ground. And before starting your Blossom, shoot once and then immediately ult. This will do a high amount of burst damage on a priority target to give them the least amount of time possible to respond with their abilities or ultimates. Start your Blossoms by shooting targets that can negate all your value, like Zenyatta's with Transcendence, Ana's with Sleep, Kiriko's with Suzu, or just anyone you want to guarantee a kill on. As for the time to use your ultimate, Blossom gets the most value during the mid to end of the fight. This is because a lot of the initial cooldowns will already be used and the enemies will be in your team's crash point, opening the perfect opportunity for you to Death Blossom. Look for when the enemy team is rotating or trying to take space that they haven't already established to get a Blossom opening. This is the time to either pop out of a corner or hit them with the flank Blossom, or just have your Lucio or Juno speed you in through the front line and clean up the whole lobby. Check out this genius play. I screwed myself on the setup of this engage and got my Wraith Form forced out. So understanding that they would push because I lost my Wraith Form, I decided to hold the corner here and had my team play on point. If the enemy team wants to push in on us, they would have to cross this corner to get to my team. I knew that the enemy team were going to use at least Cage in this fight, so I made the highly intellectual move of waiting in the corner, letting the enemies pass me so I can have the perfect opportunity to catch the backline while the rest of them were distracted. The Mauga and DPS passed me, letting me have the perfect Death Blossom on their Brig and Juno, which resulted in us winning the fight. Blossom doesn't need to be this big 4K, 5K flashy play of the game ultimate, because it's simply too weak to be able to do that. So don't be afraid to pop it as much as possible. Don't save it because it's really not worth it, and it's better to make more plays than have one really good play. The more plays you go for, the more fights you could possibly win or turn over. Also, the fight will usually still be going after your Blossom, so while you're in the ultimate, use the third-person camera to your advantage to understand your surroundings and look for the next target. Blossom also reloads your weapons, so you can continue fighting as soon as you're out of the ultimate. And that's about it for this video. I hope y'all learned something. It took me a while to do this, so please hit the subscribe button, like the video, all that jazz, and I will talk to y'all later.
New word, automatopoeia. Boom. Quit acting like you don't wanna be here. Fuck around and get jumped like leave your Glock in the glove, make you really wanna leave me alone. Get the fuck on, gone. Okay, back to the happy zone. Rap ain't nothing but the art of talking shit. My good look pretty up there, Ryan Dig. My plaid past, my solid future. Ass 9 ass and a gorgeous coochie. I'm an outcast, but you're into me. Some I got